what's up, guys? We're excited to share my story with you. And really starts with it's all about me. I don't know about you guys, but I am super selfish. And, do you ever just feel like nothing's enough? That, sometimes you get something, you think it's going to satisfy you. Then in a blink of an eye, it just fades away and you're left still wanting. You can't just seem to find the one thing that leaves an everlasting imprint on your day, your week, your month, or really your life. Are you constantly chasing after something to fulfill you? Are you constantly seeking for something better? Say that again. Are you constantly chasing after something to fulfill you? Are you constantly seeking for something better? And really that's a story of my early life. Looking back at my roots, I can see that kind of played out. Growing up, I went to church and had a decent foundation in terms of, being a good person. I did all the church stuff to a degree. I was in junior choir. We crushed the Sister Act songs, just saying. But I don't remember hearing about Jesus, or let alone have a personal relationship with him. I did all these things because I was told it was the right thing to do and it was a good environment for me to be in. And that's what I was taught. And then as I entered high school, I think that's really when my selfishness really started to take root. I started playing varsity sports pretty early on, and with that I became cool with the older kids. And for my high school, what that meant was temptations were going to be coming. Doing things I shouldn't be doing. They came quickly, and I think in an attempt to fill something in my life, I gave into those pretty quickly. Really anything that I thought was going to give me happiness or pleasure, really I was number one. My selfishness took over. I wanted anything that made me happy or made me feel good. So throughout high school, in that time of my life, I became very involved with drugs, alcohol, amongst other things. I was constantly chasing some sort of feeling. That's what it was all about. And I thought these outlets would provide it. But when something would get old or common or my tolerance build up, I'd continue the search for something new. Really, it was tiring. This constant chase for something more. Really fueled by me wanting to feel what I wanted. And it's crazy because I think it was all based around this idea that I was number one, and letting anything else go above that was just not going to fly with me. And I see this because I have this journal entry from my freshman year of college where we had to write about a cherished opinion. It was just like an open essay, and I wrote about religion. And this kind of just gives you an idea of what my life was like. I was like, basically, there's no God. And one of my main topics and themes of this journal entry was, and this is a quote, it says, "I don't want to submit myself to any God or Lord." My life was all about me. I was the number one, and nothing was going to come between me and what I wanted. And then my freshman year of college continued on this same path until I was met with probably one of the biggest events in my life. Tragically, I lost one of my best friends from high school. He was killed in a drinking and driving accident. This really shook my world, really. It's kind of one of those moments in life where you just kind of reevaluate everything. What's life about? Where am I going? And I really started to just meditate on the conversations that I had with him in high school and post. And, he was a Christian, and he told us, me and my friends, all the time about his relationship with Jesus. Now, he hung around with us, and he did make his mistakes. But man, something was really different about him. And after he died, that really lingered with me about him talking about Jesus. At this point for me in my life, I didn't really know what direction I wanted to go. I was living this life going one direction. This happens to me, and now all of a sudden I just feel this pull, this encouragement to explore Jesus. And luckily I started hanging out with my wife, my now wife at the time. And ironically enough, she was kind of going through the same thing, exploring her faith. So we would go on these drives, have deep conversations, read the Bible together. And our focus, I think, really came down to figuring out what this meant to follow Jesus. We would hear people decide to follow Jesus. We didn't know what that was. So that's really what our focus was. And for me, what I learned and what this decision to follow Christ hinged on was putting him first in my life, which meant that I'm not number one anymore. And that just wasn't easy. I remember one time vividly, we're driving around. We went to Shippensburg University, so we're in the ruralness of Pennsylvania, driving around, having some good conversation. And then things got pretty serious, and we just dove into the question, do we want to do this? Do we want to, decide to follow Christ? And I have to be honest, it was super scary. And I was afraid. I remember, crying and being I'm afraid to make this jump. Not only are the people around me who aren't Christians going to be what's going on, but my selfishness is going to have to take a back seat if I'm going to do this. So I remember just being oh my goodness, how do we do this? And we pulled into Sheetz gas station in Shippensburg. And right next is an auto shop. And they have a marquee and they always had stuff up. We pull in. I'm in this zone of just I want to follow, but I'm afraid. And I look up. And on the marquee is Mark 5:36. It says, "Do not be afraid, just believe." I'm this is crazy. I'm is this a sign from God? And really was. It's God leading me, telling me, take a step, make the decision to follow Christ. We'll work the other stuff out later. And then I surely did decide to follow Jesus shortly after. See, for me, having Jesus in my life and deciding to follow him filled this void that I was chasing. Drugs, alcohol, the pleasures of the world, call them, they never lasted. They were temporary. I always had to keep chasing the next thing. But with Jesus, the hope, the joy that I have in him that lives inside of me now, it's permanent. It's not going anywhere. And I'm coming to realize in my life, then and still today, it's not about me. It's all about him. And that might sound like I have it all together. But that's completely wrong, because I am still a mess. I mess up a lot. And my selfishness does still peek its head out. And after I decided to follow Christ, it was just the beginning of this journey. This journey that's going to continue until the day that I die. But that permanent joy, that lasting joy of knowing and following Christ is what keeps me going. It was all about me, but now every day I'm trying to make it more about him. And because of that, who I am today is vastly different than who I was then. And really my goal is to be able to say that over and over again, that who I am today is vastly different than who I was yesterday. So what happened to me, what changed my life, is just really good news. And I'm really glad to share it with you. This good news really is the life, death, the resurrection of Jesus, and what that means for us. That's the good news that changed my life. And this idea that when we put our faith in Jesus as both Lord and Savior, we are saved. And that's what really becoming a Christian is all about. Accepting Christ as Lord. So submitting to him. We can't be number one anymore. We need to elevate Christ to a the highest standard. And then accepting Christ as our Savior. Knowing that on the cross, he took it for us. He took the heat. My selfishness, our wrongdoings, our actions, on the cross, forgiven and wiped away through his death and resurrection. So what's crazy and what's cool is I'm not perfect. Jesus was. And that's the hope that it brings, and that's going to carry me on. So am I constantly chasing after something to fulfill me? Am I constantly seeking for something better? I was, but after I met Jesus, I'm not anymore. Thanks, guys.